Hello YouTube and welcome to my channel. My name is Robert and today I'm doing something quite different. There's a young man named Tyler who has also a YouTube channel, and he's a typical American wanting to learn more about Canada. Well, I thought, what the hell? I'm a typical Canadian. So I thought maybe I'll help him out with some of his questions. And before we get into this, feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me out. Hit the post notification bell. When I drop new content, you'll be notified. Give the video a thumbs up. And feel free to leave a comment. And make sure you subscribe to Tyler's channel as well for all the hard work that he's done. And I'll leave a link in the description box below to the original video. Okay, here we go.
What's going on, everyone? I'm just a simple American man here to react and learn about Canada's history. And you know, this is something I complain about a lot, is that in America, they just don't do a great job of teaching the history and governments and the workings about of foreign nations, let alone such an important, if I can speak, nation of Canada to our north, on our border. I mean, people we've worked with side by side for far longer than I've been born, and yet I think about it and I don't know anything about Canadian history. So I'm here to rectify that, to fix that, and hopefully you can put up with me and maybe get a little out of it as well. And with that being said, let's take a look. This is a little 5-minute timeline animation, Canadian history in 5 minutes.
Now that's not looking good. The history of Canada in 5 minutes. Okay.
That's the level of detail I think I need to start out on to at least get a good overall view of what we're talking about.
Canada, the second largest country in the world, occupies most of the northern part of North America, covering the vast land area from the United States in the south to the Arctic Circle in the north. It is a country of enormous distances and rich natural resources. Indigenous people lived in what is now Canada for thousands of years before the first Europeans arrived.
Technically, the indigenous people are, or were, Europeans. So, he's already wrong there. In my opinion, they were the first Europeans.
They are now.
Yeah, that's the same exact thing with America. Although it's pretty widely accepted in America that when the first Americans or settlers came over to the United States, they were horrible to the indigenous people. They killed them, they took their land, they kicked them out, and yeah, like the relationship with the indigenous people who originally lived there, it was horrible. We treated them horrible. Yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say about that, but I am interested to see maybe Canada's history with that.
Canada's history with the indigenous people wasn't much better.
Known as the First Nations and the Inuit people. The first European people to come to Canada arrived between 15,000 and 30,000 years ago across a land bridge that joined Asia and North America.
Now, what he doesn't say is these people some stayed in North America, some went all the way down to South America. I'm 95% sure.
Around 1000 AD,
Fascinating to think about, right? This I do know about. I at least know that much, with all of the ice ages and whatnot forming massive land bridges across, so it was possible for cross-continent travel, which is interesting that has a place in Canada's story. I mean, it makes sense.
The first European people to come to Canada arrived between 15,000 and 30,000 years ago across a land bridge that joined Asia and North America. Around 1000 AD, the Viking explorer Leif Erikson reached Newfoundland.
What the hell is that? That's not a Viking ship. Not even close to being a Viking ship. It looks like a galley. If you're going to talk about Vikings, at least portray them properly in your animation. What? That's embarrassing.
Canada. He tried to establish a settlement, but it didn't last.
Yes, he did establish a settlement in Newfoundland. And they don't know why it was deserted. Some speculate that they just left. Others think that the inhabitants married into native tribes.
In the early
Okay.
16th century, Europeans started exploring Canada's eastern coast, beginning with John Cabot from England between 15...
Yeah, beginning with John Cabot from England. He was actually Italian, hired by the king, can't remember which one, and it was in 1497.
1534 and 15...
Huh, I'm not familiar with this man, John Cabot. Hold on. Who are
Established a
these?
settlement, but
I need
it
to hear
didn't
this again.
last. In the early 16th century, Europeans started exploring Canada's eastern coast, beginning with John Cabot from England. Between 1534 and 1542, Jacques Cartier made 3 voyages.
This guy must be an American doing the narration, because I was always under the assumption that was Cartier. So, I don't know.
Across the Atlantic, claiming the land for King Francis I of France. Cartier had 2 captured guides
Cartier.
speak the Iroquoian word Kanata, meaning village.
Yes.
By the 1550s, the name of Canada began appearing on maps.
Ah, just in the 1550s, eh? Only, only a tiny 500 years ago. That's a long time. Wow, when you think about it, to first had the word Canada be associated with this land.
Parts of Canada were settled by France and parts by Great Britain. In 1605, Port Royal...
France and Great Britain. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, that's extremely important, knowing who exactly it is, but besides the original inhabitants of that land, who were the first Europeans to come over into Canada.
Parts of Canada were settled by France and parts by Great Britain. In 1605,
France and
Port
Great
Royal
Britain.
was built in Acadia by the French, led by Samuel de Champlain. And 3 years later,
Yeah.
he started settling Quebec. The French
Quebec City is what it's now known as.
and Aboriginal people collaborated in the vast fur trade economy, driven by
Okay.
the demand for beaver pelts in Europe.
And beaver pelt was the #1 material for making felt hats. Pretty sure the beaver population was pretty close to extinction at one point.
Outstanding leaders like Jean Talon, Bishop Laval, and Count Frontenac built a French empire north...
Are these all individuals that are very well known in Canadian history?
No. Was ever talked about in school when I went there was Champlain. The other 3 were never mentioned in some Canadian history class. Of course, that was many years ago that I was in school.
Because you can rest assured we are well into territory that is never talked about in American education, American history classes. You would have to be a major in history in college or university to...
Sorry to interrupt, but you can see the years that these cities were established. 1605. 1608 was when Quebec was formed. Montreal, 1642. Nice.
have any chance of learning about this inside of education. But luckily for us, we have 5-minute 5-minute YouTube videos that can rectify all of that in just 5 minutes. Wow. Who would have thought that the future would be so great?
Leaders like Jean Talon, Bishop Laval, and Count
I mean, there's probably a lot of American historical figures that Canadians are not familiar with. Hopefully, it would make me feel a little better.
There are some, but I probably know more about American history than an American knows about Canadian history.
Built a French empire in North America that reached from Hudson Bay to the Gulf of Mexico. In the 1700s, France and Great Britain.
Hold on. From where to where?
Bishop Laval and Count Frontenac built a French empire in North America that reached from Hudson Bay to the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes, that's true.
That I didn't know about a French empire.
You never heard of the Louisiana Purchase, where America bought so much land from France, Napoleon? He probably has heard about it. It just hasn't clued in yet.
Maybe we're just revealing, even with American history, my own ignorance. But no, I do think I would have probably heard about something like this. A French led establishment spanning the entire coast of what would be the United States. I need to look at this map for a second. Okay. So the original Canada spanned, wow, what? This is why I watch this stuff. This is fascinating. Canada spanned all the way through what is America.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
That reached from Hudson Bay to the Gulf of Mexico. In the 1700s, France and Great Britain battled for control.
Oh, duh, what am I thinking? What was controlled by Great Britain at the time? The part of American history that I am well aware of. Okay.
You better be well aware of the War of Independence.
Okay. Because he said that it was French and UK settlers that initially came from Europe to Canada, and they were establishing yes. And I'm well aware that the UK controlled the American colonies before America gained its independence and became an independent nation. So that explains why the presence of the UK and France in America. Got it.
Of North America. In 1759, the British defeated the French in the Battle of the Plains of Abraham at Quebec City, marking the end of France's empire in America.
Yes.
The commanders of both armies.
No, they never really did a good job of teaching that France had any kind of meaningful empire in America. Did not do a good job of teaching that little fact.
Brigadier James Wolfe and the Marquis de Montcalm were killed leading their troops in battle. Following the war, Great Britain renamed the colony the province of Quebec. The French-speaking Catholic people, known as habitants or...
And I know that there are a lot of French speakers, maybe not a lot, I'm not really sure what the percentage is, French speakers in Canada. I believe in only certain areas, though.
Yes, there are a lot of French speakers in Canada. Most of them are in Quebec and some in the Maritimes. That's the East Coast. However, going to school, French was taught to us, I think, in grade 5. And then once you went into high school, you could take more French if you chose to.
Not total.
It would be French immersion. And even on the West Coast, there are not lots, but there are many people who speak French, bilingual.
Really sure about all that, though.
Canadians.
Now this here, the Habitants Canadiens, is on the Montreal Canadiens jersey. The C and the H, that's what it represents.
Strove to preserve their way of life in the English-speaking, known as habitants or the colony, the province of Quebec. The French-speaking Catholic people, known as habitants or Canadians, strove to preserve their way of life in the English-speaking, Protestant-ruled British Empire.
Yes.
After the American Revolutionary War, many people in the new United States wanted to stay loyal to Britain. Thousands came north to Canada and settled in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, and...
I didn't know that either. That's fascinating. That's the kind of thing another thing they don't teach you. A lot of people living in America after the American Revolution who still had sympathies and ties to the UK journeyed up to Canada.
Yes, we call them the Loyalists. I forgot to mention that when England defeated France for the control of Canada, many French-speaking people were kicked out of Canada and sent to live in New Orleans, Louisiana. That's where you get your Cajun from.
Wow. No, they definitely never heard that.
And Ontario.
Makes sense,
During
though.
the War of 1812, the United States tried to conquer Canada, but were
Yes.
defeated. In 18...
All right, I swear to God, we must have gone over that, but I was probably asleep. A war? I've heard of the War of 1812, don't get me wrong, and I don't mean to come off as disrespectful, not being aware of literal wars, people dying, living and dying and fighting for nations here. I don't mean to come off as disrespectful, but I still say there are such important events, even these so close to my own home, that we're not nearly made aware of enough in American education. I swear, I don't know if it's the way it's taught or what is taught in the curriculum, so much trying to be crammed in, or just not an emphasis on certain things. But we did learn about the War of 1812. I just never quite realized the significance of it between America and Canada.
Well, technically it was America and Britain. He's not entirely correct. America did attack, but it was not much. The border didn't change, so it was more of a draw than a loss to America. When the American troops invaded, they burned down the Canadian parliamentary building. And then after Napoleon was defeated, I think it was like 50,000 troops landed in Washington, D.C., and then they burned down the White House. One of the reasons why America invaded Canada in 1812 was to get rid of the British from control of that area, to give it back to the French, to the people of Quebec. That's what I was taught. And then they rejected that idea and joined forces with the British troops and fought the Americans.
And that we lost. So that it turned out well for Canada, I guess. But it's obviously always a horrific thing that a war had to occur at all.
and settled in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, and Ontario. During the War of 1812, the United States tried to conquer Canada, but were defeated. In 1867, the province of Canada was joined by two other British colonies of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia through Confederation, forming a self-governing entity named Canada. Canadian soldiers fought in World War I for the British Empire. More Canadians died in this war than any other war. Canada became better known as a country after its success in the capturing Vimy Ridge from the Germans in France.
It's Vimy Ridge, not Vimy. Vimy Ridge. That's an interesting story too. Canadian troops were in England. I'm going to ramble on here about this because it's such a unique story. Canadian troops are in England. The British High Command doesn't think anything of them, and they're sort of just keeping them back. Well, what happens when you got a bunch of Canadian soldiers not getting involved in fighting? They'll start to fight each other. And the British were getting their asses handed to them at Vimy Ridge. And so the High Command said, all right, we'll send in the Canadians. And the Canadians took the hill. I don't know how long it took, the battle, but they were victorious.
In 1917, women were given the right to vote by the end of the war, partly because of the help they gave making weapons while the men fought in Europe. In 1931, Canada became fully independent. Then the government of Canada...
Hold on, that's kind of important. Becoming independent.
In 1931, Canada became fully independent. Then the
1931.
Yeah.
It's crazy how all these things, like such incredible things that have only been around for less than 100 years, like Canada's independence. It's like when things occur before we're born, we act like they must have happened 10,000 years ago. And it's just not the case. It's wild to think about and is worthy of us or me, learning about it, paying it its due respect.
Men fought in Europe. In 1931, Canada became fully independent. Then the government of Canada made all decisions about Canada. Parliament passed the Statute of Westminster in 1931, which acknowledged Canada as a co-equal with the United Kingdom and the other Commonwealth realms. It was a crucial step in the development of Canada as a...
I know there's some kind of relationship between the UK and Canada that as an American I've never had to really think about, but I feel like I need to watch another video on that whole subject. The relationship between the UK and Canada, and I saw that
there are many Canadians who feel that when the Queen died, we should have cut all ties with the monarchy of England. I have no opinion on this because they are more figureheads now than they were before. Do you know what I mean? Yes, we will soon have Charles on our money, but that doesn't bother me at all.
it kind of had, on the flag, there were some UK aspects to it, and I don't know, just clear to me that there's much more to know than can be explained to me in this 5-minute video.
Kingdom and the other Commonwealth realms. It was a crucial step in the development of Canada as a separate state, in that it provided for nearly complete legislative autonomy from the Parliament of the United Kingdom. The Canadian economy boomed during World War II as its industries manufactured military material for Canada, Britain, China, and the Soviet Union. Despite another conscription crisis in Quebec in 1944, Canada finished the war with a large army and strong economy. In the 1960s, the Quiet Revolution took place in Quebec, overthrowing the old establishment which centered on the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Quebec.
The Quiet Revolution? I've not heard of this.
1960s? No, I was a child. If I was even born yet. I don't know. No, I don't know anything about this myself.
Is this something that's very well known?
No.
In Canadian history, the Quiet Revolution?
I'm sure it's a major point, but I'm not recalling anything.
The overthrowing of a Catholic something?
Took place in Quebec, overthrowing the old establishment which centered on the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Quebec and led to modernizing of the economy.
Here's an interesting fact. English swear words are based on sex, where the French swear words are based on the church.
The same period, Canada adopted the Maple...
I feel like you could go and... He kind of glossed over that, but I'm sure you could dive into that whole revolution too. For hours, for days. Probably for years.
Of Quebec, and led to modernizing of the economy. In the same period, Canada adopted the maple leaf flag, although not without considerable debate and misgivings among large number of English-Canadian society. In 1980...
Yes, I believe it was designed by a Frenchman from Quebec. And even the Prime Minister, I think it was Diefenbaker, he didn't want it either. He wanted the original...
The maple leaf flag. Now that's an iconic flag that 99% of Americans know the Canadian flag because it's fun, it's cool, it's distinct. I love the actual design elements of it, but I'm sure that the symbols and the colors actually must have meaning, not just that it's a fun design that's very unique and representative of Canada, but it must, there's a story to it, and I want to know.
Well, I'm pretty sure there is a story to the design of the maple leaf flag, the Canadian flag. Unfortunately, I do not know it.
I want to know more about the Canadian flag story. I'm going to look into that for sure.
Considerable debate and misgivings among large number of English-Canadian society. In 1981, the Canadian House of Commons and Senate passed a resolution requesting that the British Parliament enact a package of constitutional amendments which would end the last powers of the British Parliament to legislate for Canada and would create an entirely Canadian process for constitutional amendment.
Man, that was only 40 years ago. I think he said 1980?
81.
It's only 40 years ago when Canada truly became like they can edit their own constitution free of any UK influence or control. Man, I mean...
He's nailed it. Exactly.
This stuff is all... It's crazy. It's just what I was saying before. This stuff is recent. History is happening around us. It's just that as Americans, obviously we tend to focus on our own country, which you know is important for every nation to focus on their nation's history, probably first and foremost, but a healthy understanding of preferably... It's a global world we live in now. Everyone's connected now through the internet, through economies. You need to know about like other nations and their history and how they got to where they are. Can't stress that enough.
Canada's capital is Ottawa, and its three largest metropolitan areas are Toronto,
Ottawa.
Montreal.
I was about to say, I'm not sure I could have actually said the capital of Canada. I'm just being totally honest here. We know Toronto, we know Quebec.
And that's perfectly fine. Many Americans do not know the capital of Canada is Ottawa. Many think it's Toronto. Toronto is the capital of Ontario. So that's, I guess, where they get confused.
I know Ottawa. I know of it. I've heard of it. I couldn't really tell you anything about it. Definitely gonna have to watch something about it. And I couldn't have told you it was the capital. Just being honest.
Canada's capital is Ottawa, and its three largest metropolitan areas are Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Canada is sparsely
Vancouver.
populated, the majority of its land area being dominated by forest and tundra. Consequently, its population is highly urbanized.
What? Wait. It's mostly unpopulated area?
Montreal, and Vancouver. Canada is sparsely populated, the majority of its land area being dominated.
The yellow area is where the population is, pretty much. Was it 90% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the border?
Dominated by forest and tundra. Consequently, its population is highly urbanized, with...
I never quite really appreciated that fact. That a lot of Canada's land area isn't populated with people, it's just forest and tundra. That's really, really interesting.
With over 80% of its inhabitants concentrated in large areas and medium-sized cities,
80,
many near the
90.
southern border. Thank you for watching. Please check out our other animated history shows, and don't forget...
Wow. Man, so much to know. I think I was kind of accurate in that all I could handle at this point in time was the 5-minute Canadian history. But that alone sent my brain spinning half the time. That was a good foundation for learning the big points of Canadian history. I could watch it again. I feel like I missed things, but that was very interesting. I knew, I was getting at this at the beginning. Canada is my neighbor. America, Canada, we're right there. And to not know more about it and its culture is a travesty, to say the least. And if I can learn more about it, if I can watch more videos, maybe somehow through the internet, I can come to get some kind of better appreciation and understanding. I mean, much better than I would have had 100 years ago, where I'd just be stuck, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, where I'd just be stuck in my own little bubble forever. At least now I can watch internet videos and kind of get a grip on what's going on in Canada. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this reaction, feel free to give it a like, leave a comment, and if you're interested in watching more videos like this, more things about Canada, I'm definitely going to be making more videos, watching, learning things about Canada. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Well, there we have it. The history of Canada in 5 minutes with Tyler and some of his questions asked. Yeah, hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. It was something different. I thought, what the hell? So we'll see you again. Have a great day. Goodbye.